Good day, everybody. I hope that you are well and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 1 English lesson on sentences and fragments. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts. Grade 1, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of sentences and fragments. All right. So our chapter is sentences and fragments. Our subject is English Language Arts, grade 1. And the lessons that we are going to focus on under the chapter of sentences and fragments is to find the complete sentences and also to complete the sentences. So we're going to find the complete sentences and to also complete the sentences. All right. So when it comes to sentences and fragments, right? So a sentence, it has a naming part as well as an action part. And when it has a naming part as well as an action part, and then we say that it is a complete sentences. So a sentence has a naming part and a sentence as an action part. So naming part we call it's like saying it here, it is a noun, right? It tells us who or what is doing something. And it has the action part. The action part is something that the person or thing is doing. And once a sentence has both a naming part and it has an action part, and then we can say it tells a complete thought, right? Because now it has both action as well as a naming part, so we say that it is a complete thought. For example, if we look at a sentence, right, as well as a fragment, then we can say, my brother jumps in the pool. So my brother jumps in the pool. And if we look at that sentence, right, the naming part within that sentence is my brother. So my brother is the naming part because it tells us who jumped in the pool. So my brother is a naming part and it tells us who jumped in the pool. So I'm going to say here, naming part, right? And then we have jumps is our fragment, or jumps in the pool is our fragment. I'm going to say jumps in the pool, right? Which is our fragment. And this is, it tells us what the brother did, right? So it's a fragment, or we can say it is the action part. Another example is where we can say, I play outside every morning, right? So I is our naming part. It tells us who or what is doing the action. So I is our naming part. And then play or playing outside is our, so it's our action part, right? And we must remember that a sentence, it starts with a capital letter, and a sentence also ends with a period, or it ends with any other end mark. And in our previous lessons, right, we did sentence our different types of sentences, and that is where we said we have a statement, command, question, as well as exclamation sentence. And with all four of those types of sentences, our sentences either ends with a period, exclamation point, or a question mark, which means that a sentence starts with a capital letter, but it ends with either a period or any other end mark, which can be an exclamation point or it can be a question mark. All right. And we are doing our tutorial lesson today on aplusstudents.ca. So we will be doing our tutorial lesson on aplusstudents.ca. All right. So once again, our chapter is sentences and fragments. And a sentence, right? It has a naming part and it has an action part. And a sentence, it tells us a complete thought, right? And not forgetting that a sentence starts with a capital letter and a sentence ends with a period, or it ends with an exclamation point or a question mark. All right, so now let's go to aplusstudents.ca. And the first lesson is to find the complete sentences. And remember, we said a complete sentence has both a naming part and it has an action part. All right. So once again, we said a sentence It has a naming part, and a sentence has an action part. So naming part can be like a noun, or we can call it a subject. And then the action part we can call like a verb, right? And a sentence, right, that has both a naming part as well as an action part, we say that it can tell a complete thought. So it tells a complete thought. And then we made an example of my brother jumps in the pool, where we say that my brother is the naming part, and we say jumps is the action part. And then we also have another example where we said I play outside every day, and we said I is the naming part, and play or play outside every day is the action part. And then just lastly, a sentence starts with a capital letter, and it either ends with a period or an exclamation part, or it ends with a question mark, right? So now we're going to find the complete sentence, right? It says the complete sentence, right, is if we were to say Zach fell. So if the complete sentence is Zach fell, right? And then we can say that Zach is our naming part and fell is the action part. So Zach tells us who or what is doing the action, and fell is the action that was done by the subject, by the naming part. And if it has a naming part as well as an action part, then we can say this is a complete thought. Remember the subject, a sentence needs to have a naming part, and a sentence needs to have an action part, a noun and a verb, and then we can say that it is a complete thought. If we were to look at the sentence that says a long trip, right? And a long trip, we can't even say that it's a complete sentence because it has a naming part, which is a long trip, but it does not have an action part. Because remember, we said that a complete sentence needs to have both naming part and it needs to have an action part in order to have a, or to say that it's a complete thought. So the correct sentence that we took that has a complete or shows a complete thought is Zach fell because it has a naming part and it has an action part. All right. Let's quickly find another sentence, right? Or another complete sentence. If we look at these two sentences, it says, the cow had a calf. So the cow had a calf. And the sentence, the cow had a calf, right? It has a naming part and it has an action part. So if we were to identify the naming part, then we can say the cow is the naming part. So we're going to say a naming part. And then we're going to say had a calf, right? That is an action part. Had, right? And if a sentence has a naming part and it has an action part, then we can say it has or it tells a complete thought, right? A sentence need to have both a subject as well as a verb. It has to have both a naming part as well as an action part. All right. And if we look at the other sentence, right, it says bakes the best cakes. Bakes the best cakes. So now we need to ask ourselves who bakes the best cakes? So we have bakes the best cakes. And if we say bakes the best cakes, then we can say this is not a complete thought. And why is it not a complete sentence, right? It's not a complete sentence because it only has an action part that says bakes the best cakes. No naming part. And remember, we said that a complete sentence needs to have both a naming part as well as an action part, right? So, once again, before we continue, guys, a sentence, in order to show a complete sentence, right, or complete thought, then it means that the sentence, a complete sentence, needs to have a naming part. We can either say it's a subject or a noun, and it needs to have an action part, which we can say is the verb, right? It needs to have an action that it shows that something or someone is doing. Then it means that we have a complete thought because now we have a naming part as well as an action part. All right, let's do the last one and then we're going to our test. It says we need the complete sentence, or we need to say if it's not a complete sentence. It says she stepped on a rock. She tripped, sorry, on a rock. And if we were to see or say which one is a correct sentence, right? Or a complete thought, then we can say it's this one because she is our naming part. And then tripped on a rock is our action part. It's the action that she did. What did she do? She tripped on a rock. All right. All right. So now let's go to our test, right? And when we go into our test, then we are going to say, we're going to find the complete sentence, right? And remember, we said a complete sentence or complete thought has a naming part and it has an action part. Tells us who or what is doing something, right? And it tells us the action that he or she is doing. So if we were to select a complete sentence, right, and then we would say that a complete sentence has a naming part and it has an action part. All right, so now we're going to our test, right? And when we go to our test, we need to find the complete sentences. Remember, we said a complete sentence has a naming part and it has an action part. All right, so we need to find a complete sentence, right? And remember, a complete sentence has a naming part and it has an action part. It says, Mom is ready. The first one is Mom is ready. So, Mom is ready, or asked for help, ran away, or discovered the cure. All right. And if we were to find the complete sentence, right, then we can say, Mom is ready. And if we were to find the complete sentence, then we can say, Mom is ready. Because mom is our naming part, is ready is our action part. So we need to now find the complete sentence. Remember, a sentence has a naming part and it has a action part. We have wins the prize, they ride the bus, slammed the door, or baked a cake. So when we find the complete sentence, we say that it has must have both naming part and it must have an action part, right? It says wins the prize, they ride the bus, slammed the door, baked a cake. So now we need to choose the sentence, right? We need to find the complete sentence. All right, so now we need to find the complete sentence. Remember, a complete sentence has a naming part and it has an action part, right? All right. So if we were to find the complete sentence, then we can say they ride the bus because they is our naming part. And what is the action that they're doing? They ride the bus, right? All right. We need to complete the or find the complete sentence. It is one wish. It fits because it was raining. All right. And if we find the complete sentence, right, it says one wish. Remember a sentence, a complete sentence as a naming part and it has an action part. It fits. All right. So if we were to find the complete sentence, right, is it one wish? It fits because it was raining or for better or worse. We need to say which one is a complete sentence. All right. And if we were to find the complete sentence, right, all right. And if we were to choose the complete sentence, we can even say it fits because it being our naming part and fits being our action part, right? We can say it fits is our complete sentence. All right. We need to find the complete sentence. Remember, complete sentence has a naming part and an action part. All right, so we need to find the complete sentences. Is it the new teacher? She lost the book. All right, and if we find the complete sentence, right, it says the first one says the new teacher. All right, and if we select the complete sentence, right, and we can say she lost the book. All right, so we need to find the complete sentence. Is it Zach fell a long trip, or is taking the bus, or we can say wash our sins. The dishes. Who washed the dishes? All right, and if we find the complete sentence with both naming part as well as an action part. All right, so we can say Zach fell. Well, Zach is our naming part and fell is our action part. So we are now going to complete the sentence, right? Yes, well done. Zach fell, that is it's our sentence or a complete sentence because it has a naming part and it has an action part. All right, so we're going to complete this sentence. All right, so we are going to say, we're going to complete the sentence. And remember, we said a sentence needs to have a naming part as well as an action part. So once again, we say a sentence has a naming part and a sentence has a action part, and it is a complete thought, right? All right, so we're going to complete the sentence. So a sentence has a naming part and an action part. Right? All right. So we're now going to complete the sentences. It says the children. If we were to add a few words over there to make it complete, right? Then we can maybe say the children ate. So the children ate. All right. So if we just say that the children ate, right? Even if we just say ate, it means that the children is our naming part and ate is something that they're doing, which is our action part. Ate or eat is our action. All right. So the children ate, which means that the children is our naming part and ate is our action. It's the action part. And if we were to complete the sentence, right, and then yeah, something is missing, and a subject is missing, it says laughs at the story. All right, then if we look at the complete sentence, we can even just say Emma. We can choose a name and we can say laughs at the story. So if this person laughs at the story. All right, so once again, we say sentence has a naming part and an action part, right? All right. All right. So if we were to say a complete sentence, right, then we can just say maybe the girl jumps, the girl laughs. All right. So the girl, all right. And we know about the girl. And if you say the girls fell, all right. So basically, we have a sentence, right? And we have a complete thought, right? And we said in order to say that we have a complete thought is when we have a sentence with both a naming part, which tells us who or what is doing something, as well as the action part. All right. All right. So this is now the end of our lesson on sentences and fragments. We said in order to see if we have a complete sentence or fragment is where we show a both an action a noun, which is a naming part, as well as an action part. All right. All right, so that is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much, grade ones, for joining the class. Thank you very much for also just interacting, and I really hope you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.